What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're tackling not only one of the biggest debates in the One Piece fandom, but one of the biggest debates in anime in general. Is One Piece too long? It's a question that pops up every time a new arc begins or a new episode drops, and honestly, it's one that deserves its own deep dive. But here's the thing, I'm finna give y'all the answer now. The answer is no, One Piece is absolutely not too long. In fact, its length is one of the key factors that makes it so brilliant. Allow me to explain why. And by too long, I mean, is the episode count or the chapter count unnecessarily long? Could they have told the same story with the same results in less time? That's what we're here to talk about today. But before we get started, for me y'all, can y'all drop a like, drop a comment, and sub? I'm trying to hit 2,000 before May, so I appreciate every like, every comment, every sub, but anyway, let's get back to the video. Thank y'all. Alright, first, let's talk about one of the biggest reasons why One Piece isn't too long. The world building. The world of One Piece is vast, it's intricate, and it's interconnected. The world government, the Grand Line, the Four Seas, the islands, the kingdoms, the celestial dragons, the revolutionary army, the yonko, the marines, and now we even have the holy knights. All of these elements need time to be explored. One Piece doesn't rush through these details, it lets them unfold gradually, and each new piece of lore adds weight to the series. Okay, out of anything I've ever seen, One Piece has the best world building. In the same series, we have an island in the future in Egghead, we have a straight up Japanese island in Wano, we have an island in the sky, we have a desert island, and we have another island that's half ice, half fire. Come on, dog. Not to mention, Oda breaks down the cultures and society of each of the islands that we go to. So we're literally exploring different countries in a sense every time the Straw Hats go to a new island. One of the most captivating things about One Piece is the way Oda has interwoven plot threads across arcs and sagas. From very early on, we've been introduced to the idea of the ancient weapons, Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus. These ancient weapons hold the key to world-changing power, and they've been referenced throughout the story, but only now with Wano, Egghead, and Elbaf, the full reveal of Nika the Sun God, are we finally now beginning to understand how these pieces fit together. The lore surrounding the Void Century, the poneglyphs, and the world government's dark secrets are all tied to these ancient weapons, and it's only after dozens of arcs and hundreds of chapters that we're beginning to see how these mysteries come to a head. The Red Line, which separates the Grand Line and the Four Seas, is also a key element that needs to be explored, especially as we learn that it's man-made and a major factor in the world's current political landscape. The world government's control over the seas, the creation of the 7 warlords, and how they influence world events all contribute to the complexity of One Piece's lore. A shorter series would have never had the time to slowly unravel all these secrets in such an impactful way. But speaking of Nika, let's dive deeper into one of the most exciting developments in recent arcs, the revelation of Nika, the Sun God. This is a major game changer, and it ties directly into the D legacy, the will of the people who carry the D in their name, like Luffy, Goldie Roger, Garp, Dragon, and Law, and so many others. The Nika revelation ties into the freedom and liberation theme that has been at the heart of One Piece from the very start. Luffy's Devil Fruit, which we originally thought was just a simple paramecia, is revealed to be the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika, an ancient godlike fruit that represents freedom and joy. This is massive not only for Luffy's character, but for the entire world of One Piece. The fact that Luffy's journey has been leading him toward becoming this figure, a force of freedom, is something that has been hinted at since the very beginning of the series, and it ties back into the will of D, the revolutionaries, and the ultimate destruction of the world government's reign. But while also being a shocking reveal, it also kind of isn't. Luffy freed Nami's people from Arlong in Arlong Park. Luffy freed Vivi's people from Crocodile in Alabasta. Luffy freed the people of Dressrosa from Doflamingo. Luffy has been doing this liberating freedom thing for a long time, so him being the embodiment of freedom, joy, and liberation is just fitting for his character. Oh, he also freed the people of Wano from Kaido. I forgot to mention that. Now, if One Piece was shorter, it wouldn't be able to tell the story that they've been telling. Let's look at another masterpiece, Harumo Arakawa's Full Metal Alchemist. That series has 108 chapters, and I consider it to be perfect. It is arguably the greatest anime of all time. But One Piece couldn't tell its story in 108 chapters. There's too many figures, there's too many variables that need to get taken care of. It doesn't mean that it's worse because it needs more chapters to tell its story, it's just how Oda wrote the story. One Piece currently has 1,145 chapters, if we're counting the leaks. That's like 10 times the amount that Fullmetal has, and One Piece is nowhere near done. We're still getting introduced to new factions, new ideas, and new characters. So it needs these many chapters to tell this story because Oda created a giant story. While Fullmetal primarily dealt in Amestris. The entirety of Fullmetal Alchemist takes place in Amestris, while One Piece, they can't sit still. Luffy and the gang are in a new island every other episode or every other chapter. Now imagine if One Piece had been shorter. We wouldn't have the time to properly set up these intricate details. Nika's introduction is a culmination of years of subtle storytelling, and we couldn't get here without all the build-up, the mysteries, and the lore that had been dropped in previous arcs. This deep lore would have been rushed or completely overlooked in a shorter series. Now let's talk about Skypiea, which often gets overlooked when discussing the grand scope of One Piece. Skypiea isn't just another filler arc or a random adventure. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle that ties into the larger world building of One Piece. Skypiea is where we first learn about Sky Island clearly, and the ancient history that ties directly into the Void Century. Skypiea introduces us to the poneglyphs, ancient stone tablets that hold the history of the world, and we get our first glimpse of the Will of D through the enigmatic figure of Gol D. Roger. The ancient city of Burka and the Skypiean people also show us that the existence of civilizations that have been erased from history by the world government, and this sets up later revelations about the true history in the Void Century. This arc also introduces Enel, one of the most powerful characters in the series whose backstory and motivations are tied into the larger themes of One Piece. But more importantly, Skypiea's story of freedom. The struggle between the Skypieans and the god Enel is a direct parallel to the struggles Luffy faces in other arcs. The idea of tyranny versus freedom is a theme that One Piece explores again and again and again, and Skypiea is the first major arc where we see this clearly defined. Without Skypiea, we wouldn't have such a strong sense of how deep the world government's control runs or how the ancient civilizations and their history shape the present. Every arc in One Piece is critical to the story. Well, every arc but Thriller Bark. I think that arc is absolute ass. Each one is foreshadowed and relevant to the larger narrative, and here's why. Let's start with the East Blue Saga. Romance Dawn, Orange Town, Syrup Village, Baratier, Oolong Park, and Logtown. This introductory saga sets the tone for the entire series. We meet Luffy and the gang, and we begin to understand the themes of pursuing the dreams. The foreshadowing includes the Nami arc, which is a major motif of trust and freedom, Zoro's dreams of being the greatest swordsman, and the legacy of Gol D. Roger, along with his execution in Logtown. The Alabasta arc is a pivotal arc in which Luffy and his crew fight to free a country from an unjust king, Crocodile. The themes of tyranny versus freedom are here, and we get our first major taste of an ancient weapon with the introduction of Pluton. I mentioned before that Skypiea was our first introduction to tyranny versus freedom. I didn't mention Crocodile and Alabasta because the citizens of Alabasta viewed Crocodile in a positive light. They didn't know that they were being taken advantage of. However, the citizens in Skypiea knew that Enel or Eneru was a tyrant. Water 7 and Enies Lobby. Oh my god, these are perfect. The buildup of the revolution becomes more apparent. We learn of the world government's corruption and we witness the Straw Hats' defiance against it. Robin's backstory foreshadows the destruction of the poneglyphs and the legacy of the Void Century. It's also here where we get a little bit more lore about Roger, with Tom building his ship from the Adam Tree wood, and things like that. We learn of the CP government agencies, so we learn of CP9 here, and we also learn about the seriousness that is investigating the Void Century, with Robin's flashback. And now we're on to Sabaody Archipelago. This arc is one of the first foreshadowing arcs of the Revolutionary Army and the Yonko system in full force. It shows us the severity of the world government and introduces Rayleigh, a very important figure tied to Roger's legacy and Luffy's development. It's the first arc that shows us, Luffy ain't the only big dog out here on the ocean. There's other rookies that are showing up that are either just as strong, quote unquote, as him, or just as notorious as him. And this arc introduces Law, who's the fucking GOAT. So how could it not be great? In this arc, we find out what happens when you hit a celestial dragon, and with that, we get to see how strong an admiral truly is. Now, I know in Water 7 / Enies Lobby, Kuzan shows up and he fights the Straw Hats, but he's not trying, he's basically just testing them. Kizaru was having fun with the supernovas. He was having a blast just beating the ever-living shit out of them. It's the first time that the Straw Hats have utterly felt hopeless. And then obviously everything with Kuma. Kuma sets him free. This kicks off the time skip. I don't even want to talk about Kuma. Best dad. Shout out Kuma, dog. I don't even want to speak about Kuma. If you know, you know. Dressrosa is a major arc where the significance of the Will of D, the King of Dressrosa, and the Revolutionary Army all come into play. It also ties into the family dynamics of Don Quixote do Flamingo. It also introduces Sabo. Well, like what are we doing? It introduces Sabo, who turns out to be cracked. He's a major player in the fucking Revolutionaries, and obviously it's setting up the inevitable clash with Kaido. But I will say Dressrosa did not need to be 150 episodes. That did not need to happen. So when I reference being too long, I'm normally speaking about the manga because I just think the anime's pacing is atrocious. That's not an anime thing, it's a Toei thing. Now Wano. This arc is incredibly significant because it brings together multiple threads. It's not just about Kaido or the samurai. It's also about the Void Century, the Ancient Kingdom, and the Devil Fruits. We also get to learn about the Lunarians. This arc foreshadows the ultimate clash between the world government and the forces of freedom. Oh, and did I mention Gear 5 Luffy? We learned a little bit more about Joy Boy, who was first mentioned in Fishman Island. I forgot to include Fishman. Fishman Island, we also get to learn about Shirahoshi, who is, oh, sorry, spoiler alert, Poseidon. But in Wano, you start kind of learning that devil fruits have a will of its own, which can just make you think, do certain fruits just inevitably end up with certain people intentionally, or does it just happen to be a coincidence? Now, Egghead, we learn a whole lot, especially the introduction of Dr. Vegapump, the dude who's been responsible for every single technological advancement in all of One Piece. Joy Boy's stored up Haki, the Elders and their transformations, Sabo with Leloucia, Imu's big weapon. We learned about the world flooding 2 times over. Egghead is basically a lore drop. And now we are on Elbaf. Shanks has a twin? What? Okay, not only are we now introduced to a brand new faction in the Holy Knights, Dragon is wary of them, so that has to mean something. We meet Scopper fucking Gaban. We meet Rogers Sanji. Are you kidding me? And Loki, who's 100% not going to be a villain. Come on now, it's One Piece. Loki is not going to be a bad person. In One Piece, when evidence is seeming like somebody is a bad person, they usually aren't a bad person. So Loki's going to be an ally. But enough about Loki. The mural that Frankie saw, the poem basically explaining 2 different wars and 3 different gods. Oh, my brain couldn't handle it. Oh, holy shit. The week that those leaks came out, I just didn't know what to do with myself. But again, everything ties in, because in Skypiea, the rain, the forest, and the earth god were first introduced, and now we're seeing in the mural that these gods are going to appear or have appeared in the past. So when we One Piece fans say everything is connected, everything is connected. There's just so much story left to tell. I don't even know what Oda's gonna do. Well, now that I just mentioned Elbaf, let's talk about it. We have the upcoming Elbaf War, which will be a turning point in the series. Elbaf, the land of the giants, has been teased for so long, since Little Garden, and we're finally getting to see the full picture of what it means for the world of One Piece. The giants' long-standing conflict with the world government and their involvement in the Great Pirate Era are huge factors that will play into upcoming battles. This is the kind of build-up that One Piece excels at. These aren't random plot points that come out of nowhere. They're carefully set up, and each revelation carries weight. The Elbaf War just isn't a battle between Luffy's crew and the forces of the world government or the Yonko. It's a war that will involve the liberation of the oppressed and the destruction of the tyrannical rule of the Celestial Dragons. In many ways, it represents a final confrontation between the forces of tyranny and the dreams of freedom that the Straw Hats embody. The kind of thematic payoff that takes years to develop, and we need that time to fully appreciate the significance of these clashes. Okay, so I got too carried away and I mentioned this too early, but the world flooding. This is one of the most ominous prophecies in the series. The idea that the world will flood is tied to the Ancient Kingdom in the Void Century, and it's something we've been hearing about for ages. The Revolutionary Army, led by Monkey D. Dragon, have been quietly working behind the scenes to overthrow the world government. Every small victory they achieve, every island they liberate, is slowly building up towards the ultimate goal of revolution. This slow burn narrative makes the payoff so much more satisfying, because when the Revolution Army finally clashes with the world government, it will feel earned and not rushed. The flooding itself directly ties to the destruction of the Red Line, which will reshape the world and finally bring freedom to the oppressed nations. The event is tied to the idea of resetting the world, allowing people to rebuild society without the oppression of the celestial dragons, the world government, and the systems that have controlled everything for centuries. The world flooding isn't just a physical event, it's symbolic of the catalyst for change, a moment when the world will finally break free from its constraints and transform into something new. The culmination has been foreshadowed throughout the series, with islands like Fishman Island and Alabasta acting as a microcosm of the larger struggle. This revolution, which has been brewing from the very beginning, is another example of why One Piece's long-term storytelling is so powerful. Each of these small arcs, each of the character developments, and each of the decisions made by Luffy and his crew slowly move us closer to the ultimate conclusion, the fall of the world government, and the creation of a world where everyone is free to live as they choose. Ultimately, the length of One Piece isn't a burden, but a strength. Each arc contributes to the larger narrative, whether it's exploring the mysteries of the Ancient Kingdom, the Will of D, or the freedom versus tyranny themes. Without all of these arcs, we would never get the intricate world building, the slow unraveling of mysteries, or the depth of emotional payoffs that make One Piece such a powerful story. Every arc, no matter how seemingly small or disconnected, plays a vital role in shaping the future of the world and its characters. The elaboration of lore, the building of tension, and the momentum of character development all require time to reach their full potential. It's the interconnectedness of every story, and even the most seemingly unrelated ones, that provide the groundwork for the grand finale. When we look back on the whole series, it will be clear that every single arc, from the East Blue to Elbaf and beyond, has been necessary to get us to the point where the Revolutionary Army, the Pirate King, and the final war will determine the fate of the world. In a shorter series, all these key developments would have been glossed over, rushed, or left unexplored. So y'all, is One Piece too long? No, absolutely not. Its length is what makes it great. Every arc, every character, every battle, and every piece of lore contributes to the story in ways that pay off in the end. The journey that Oda has taken us on, it's deliberate, calculated, and filled with meaning. It's a story that's been unfolding slowly but surely, and it's the slow burn that makes the eventual payoff so satisfying. In other words, tighten up, lock in, and I will see y'all in Elbaf. Alright, let me get back on track. The arcs that might seem like side stories, the characters who appear only briefly, they all have their place in the larger puzzle. As we move toward Endgame, we'll look back on all of them with a deeper understanding of their significance. And that's the magic of One Piece. It's not just the destination that matters, it's the journey, and every single step along the way has been worth it. Okay, future Zay here. Yeah, no, Toei could stop with whenever somebody gets hit panning to every single character that's ever existed in One Piece's face before showing us the character hitting the ground. That can stop. That does stretch the episode like an extra 5 minutes whenever there's a fight. They do need to stop doing that. But like I say all the time, man, that's just my opinion. This is coming from a person who has all 108 volumes of One Piece. I've read all 1,145 chapters, and I'm waiting for the next one. So if you've never seen One Piece, it may look intimidating. You may think, oh, it's too long, it's not worth it. Nah, it really is. Because at one point, you need to watch to enjoy, not to watch to catch up. One, because it is a significant amount of episodes. Like, this video is not me saying One Piece doesn't have a lot of episodes. It's about, is One Piece too long? So if you watch to try and catch up, one, you're going to burn yourself out, and two, you're not going to enjoy the story. And the second reason is, there's going to be a time it'll just hit you. Like when kids just gain consciousness for the first time, and you just start remembering stuff, it's going to hit you and you're like, yo, this is incredible. And I promise you, that day will come, and you'll be glad that you watched this video. Until next time, y'all. Thank you.